Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to integrate multiple theoretical perspectives in your writing. Now, we'll be using a sample assignment from a particular course and program, but the basic principles are going to be the same regardless of what your field is and what your assignment is. And these are also things that, in a larger form, you'd also be applying when writing a doctoral dissertation or doctoral project or capstone that is guided by a group of different theories that you are tying together to explain why certain things are being treated as important as they are. So this is also one of our less formal webinars. So you've seen things where we have lots of slides. Here we're going to look at the assignment instructions and break down, just using that and a few written out examples, how to work. Now, we encourage questions throughout the process, but let's just dive in. And if you're new to the Online Writing Center, I will say that you can come visit us up to twice per week, appointments permitting. And you can sign up for a email appointment where you sign up for time, upload your paper with any special requests, and we send you feedback generally within 24 hours. If it's a Thanksgiving weekend, might be a little bit longer, but we'll get back to you well in time to integrate feedback before the assignment's due. You can also sign up for a Zoom appointment where you meet with one of our team members in real time, and you get to ask questions back and forth, ask, oh, why this, or how that, or what if I did that? And it all depends on what sort of feedback would be most helpful to you at that particular point. And many students will go back and forth between the two. So please don't feel like you are locked into just one. With no further ado, let's go ahead and look at our chosen assignment today. So this is coming from our Como program here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions for this. So this is coming from a larger course, Leadership and Communication. And one of the things about leadership is that expectations are very important. And now a lot of companies will ask when they're hiring for executive leadership, and sometimes even middle management, they will ask what your theory or theories of leadership are, because they're trying to find something that will be compatible with the team, with the unit, or the company as a whole. So definitely a very important thing. Now, we can see from looking at the instructions, it says cluster theory assessment. And our preamble here, when it's discussing the purpose, says, oh, this is designed to integrate theoretical perspectives and recommendations. Okay, so if we look through these instructions, we'll see a few things that are fairly straightforward. Answer all prompts and questions below. When new students ask me, what's the best way to get an A on the paper? I say, start by doing everything that is asked of you. And if it's worded like a suggestion, treat that as a requirement. This is generally a good business practice as well. Customers like it when they get the things they thought they were paying for, rather than something that is missing some bits. So we see that there are some questions to answer here, and that the assignment is divided into 3 parts. And so you might look and say, okay, 4 to 6 pages, I'll just divide that equally and give 1 1/3 to 2 pages each. Well, let's take a look at the rubric and see what the rubric suggests there. Because if we break this down here, we see that, okay, part 1, that's 25 points out of 100. So that's a quarter of the points. Part 2 is 45 out of 100. So that's 45%. And then part 3 itself is only 20 points out of 100, so 20%. And then the last 10% is your APA formatting correct? Do you have good spelling and grammar? Have you proofread that and communicate clearly and all that stuff? So 10% for polish, but 45% is going to this part 2, which is a good thing to know, because that is a general guideline that this section is supposed to be the largest and fullest part of this. And if we think about it, this is kind of an overview this is looking at a specific theory and really unpacking it. And this is applying things to a particular person. Sheryl Sandberg is the famous Facebook executive who had that recommendation to women in leadership to lean in. And her particular leadership philosophy and her idea of what trade-offs one should make are a way of approaching things that may or may not work for a particular organization or group. And that's the kind of thing that you could talk about here. But let's go about focusing on this aspect here, because this is really where it's discussing what theoretical ideas mean when applied to this particular concept or model of moral development, as opposed to, these are talking about leadership more generally, talking about leadership concept and practice, the two kinds of followers who are attracted to ethically destructive leadership, unpacking that, and then applying one particular leadership style to another. So we basically have three core leadership concepts in here. We have the moral development stages, two theories of your choice, and then applying Sheryl Sandberg's recommendations as if they were another leadership theory. And so we're going to be talking about them very, very similarly in this. Now, it's always good to look at what they have given you for a particular assignment. So in this case, this is a week 5 assignment. So if we were to look at the week 5 reading assignments, we would see that there are some things very related to it. We have the course textbook, we have this TED Talk video, and then we have this other source here, which we'll just open up, and we see that is another video. Now that particular one isn't available, but we're retooling this course, so when you get to it, you should have a up-to-date video here. And the way that we format that as a citation and a reference will be the same. Now, as far as the way you talk about something, so if you were to be approaching this in a paper, you would probably be introducing this and just saying, okay, according to this theory. Now, if you're writing about this in the context of a doctoral dissertation or doctoral project, you would have a specific section about your theoretical or conceptual framework where you'd start out by saying, my study or my project is guided by X. And X could be one theory, it could be a combination or framework of multiple theories, it could be a combination of theory and something else like a model, in which case we call it a conceptual framework. But you start by saying, here's what I'm using to understand information in the study, and here is why. And the why could be, it's being used for something like that already. It could be someone suggested doing this. It could be you looked at it and said, okay, these are priorities for the organization, so we're using something that aligns with that. When we step back to a course assignment like this, we're not explaining that reasoning so much as we are saying, okay, this specific thing is useful or not useful for the thing that we are doing. So for a course paper like this, it will be much more focused. The writing, well, will be at a level of detail appropriate to this being a 4 to 6 page paper. Sometimes if you're doing a doctoral dissertation, you might have a theoretical framework section that was that length and more, depending on how much unpacking you had to do and whether it was something that had been used in that context or not. So with that, let us go ahead and bridge from these instructions into how you would start laying out and describing these theories. So we could hop out and get our APA course paper template, but really the things that we're talking about now are going to be clear in any Word document, and we'll be able to see a little bit more if we're using single spacing here. So if you are answering a question like this, what are the 3 ingredients? And we'll just fold that to contrast the question and the answer, you're probably going to be saying, well, either this is my opinion, and like to me, the three necessary ingredients, or according to author date, the three ingredients. And what this is doing is this is saying, all right, this is what I believe. And this is saying, according to someone else or some group of others. Now, same thing. For answering this, it's going to be, is this your personal or professional assessment, or are you reading through the lens of an author or authors? With this part here, it's going to be your reporting. So it's not about you as the professional here. This is a very open and shut thing. According to Kohlberg, what are the three stages of moral development? And so you would approach that and write about it differently. Okay, so Kohlberg's, and then if you're citing the original work by Kohlberg, then you just have author, date like that. And if you were citing another author writing about them, and then you'd have your author and date at the end of the sentence, because it's attributing all the ideas in there to you read them through this source, as opposed to this is you read it yourself. Now, when we get to this part here, where would you rank yourself? You're talking about you, and so you are the authoritative source. So of course, you're going to refer to yourself here. And this is where you would use an I statement. I rank myself as whatever it is. Now, where we'll spend most of our time today is going to be on this next part here. So let's ask that question. What is a teleological theory, or what does teleology mean? So this could be loosely described as the way of understanding what everything means together. So in Greek, tele means the end. And so a telephone is the sound at the end. Logos is logic. So teleology is the logic or the reasoning or science of the ends, of understanding whether the result you get means something. So when we have a teleological theory, what that means is we're talking about a theory of morality. So you could have a number of different ones. The one that people are probably most familiar with off the top of their head, it would be utilitarianism, which is, well, we're trying to just make things work as well as we can. You know, we're not expecting everyone to be super happy, but we're trying to just make it so it works out well enough for everyone. So if we were doing this, okay, well, according to utilitarian theory, and then you would cite whoever it was that you read to learn about that, ... However, according to, now we get to deontological. Now that's an interesting term that people don't use all the time. So deontology is talking about whether the action itself can be right or wrong. So like if you say murder is always wrong or murder is a sin, that is more of a deontological ethical statement, as opposed to, well, you know, it depends if you can get away with it or not. So deontological ethics are really talking about moral principles. You know, what should we always do? Classic example, if you believe that eating meat is always wrong and you're trapped in a lifeboat and there are two of you, and you're considering cannibalism, which is a terrible thing. But if you're considering cannibalism, the joke goes, the vegan says, well, I'm going to teach you if I wanted to. It's just frog. And hopefully none of us are ever in a situation where that is considered a topic that we have to broach. All right, back to the ethics here. Well, it says a particular deontological theory. So we're going to have to cite a specific one. So we need an example here. And so let's say we were going to cite Immanuel Kant, who is a famous German philosopher from the 18th century. And we would list that, and then you discuss it and unpack it. Now, you might be invoking or citing other authors talking about it, but we're going to start by acknowledging this. Now, once you've identified it, then you don't need to have Kant 1803 and everything, so long as it's clear that you're referring to the same thing. So if you follow that up with a sentence that says, this theory states that, or a precept of this deontological theory, because it is obvious from the writing that you're referring to the same thing. Now, in APA style, if you start a new paragraph, we should orient the reader with a author date citation for that thing that we're discussing. So if it's within the same paragraph, you've clearly introduced it, you're clearly referring to the same thing, great. You can refer to it with these sort of shorthands without having to have Kant 1803 and everything. But if we start a new paragraph, introduce it over again. And if you start going back and forth between the two, it'll probably be simpler if you just have an author date citation in every sentence, so we don't get confused about which was being referred to at each stage. Okay, now Sheryl Sandberg's 3 recommendations. So here's the question where we go back to our sources here. So if we look back at the website for this course, it will take us out to the YouTube page for Sheryl Sandberg's TED Talk. Now, this is a much quoted talk and definitely a conversation topic that, well after it took place, is very important and relevant. The question why we have too few women leaders, whatever profession we're looking at, most of them have a much smaller portion than the demographics would suggest and what the graduates of leadership programs would suggest. So our question first is how to cite this, because a lot of people would cite it as Sandberg 2010, which would be incorrect. And since 10% of the grade for this assignment comes from the polish, is your APA style and formatting correct? Have you spell checked? Does it communicate clearly, etc.? We want to make sure we get all of those things. So the first thing that we're going to do here is identify the specific elements that we need. So the first is the author. And when you're citing a YouTube video or another service like Vimeo and such, it's going to be the channel that gets listed as the author. So in this case, TED. And doesn't matter that we know what it's spelled out down here. We're just going to go with whatever the channel name is here. So TED. Next, we need the publication date. And unlike a book, for video, it's going to be the year, the month, and the day. All 3 of those, not just the year. We're going to need the title of the video, and that's this one here. And that includes this bit here, which identifies a speaker. It's whatever the title of the video is. So the other element that we're going to need is the URL. And so you can either copy that up from up here or use the share button. And then if you use the share button, you can get this shorthand thing where it has the u2.be. And so it makes it a little bit more concise. So I recommend using this here. Okay, let's go back to Microsoft Word and start filling this in. And because once we have that reference entry, we can start looking at what this would look like to cite it. And just to get our things looking correctly, I'm added a references page here with the heading there, and I'm going to use the APA reference style here, which I got to because in this case, I have the template styles on my computer. You'd see them if you were working with our template file. All right, so TED, that's the author. Then in parentheses, the publication year, that's 2010. And then I mentioned that we're going to have more information than if this was a journal article. So we have the month, and then we need the day, that's December 21st. And then we close the parentheses and put another period. Next, we have the title of the video, however it was placed in YouTube. And so we paste that and we switch it to text only. And we're going to go ahead and italicize that and then label it so that it's clear that it's a video. And then remember that URL I copied? That's where that's going here. So what this does is it tells us, okay, so the name of the channel is TED. This is when it was published. This is what it's called. The fact that it has the speaker name in that doesn't matter. We just put in whatever the video was called there. A note to say it's a video. And we need the name of the platform, which is YouTube, and then the link. And there we have it. We have a complete reference there. Now for citing it, you'd have the name of the channel and the publication year only. So great. If we are describing this, and so even though we're referring to her ideas, the place we got it was published by TED in 2010. So that's why that's getting cited instead of the author. And this is an area where people frequently get confused because they are used to referring to the authors directly. But, this is a particular video captured, presented, edited by TED. Now you might say, well, hold on, Dr. Considine. What if I want to reference her book? Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So if we have her famous book, which I will point out came out a couple years after this talk went viral. So we see this is the original book is Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. Now, there are a couple follow-ups, but if we're going for the original, so I'm going to jump us over to WorldCat. WorldCat is a global library catalog that searches the catalogs of many different libraries. So we have a variety of books here. In this case, we're looking for Sheryl Sandberg as an author. So I'm going to go ahead and select creator there. And we have a variety of ones here. Summary and analysis. No, we're not interested in that secondhand one. We're not interested in this other book, or the interviews. We are looking for the book that she authored. So I'm going to narrow things down here. I can even limit the publication year. So we're looking at whatever she wrote after that video came out, up to the point where we know the book came out, and we see, oh, yes, here's the book, the classic first edition. So if this is the one that you were consulting and you wanted to reference and cite here, well, we can go to WorldCat here and save ourselves a little time by using this cite button. And we set that to APA 7th edition, and we get this, and we can go ahead and copy that and head back to Word. Now, I mentioned this is a big time saver, but you should always proofread things that you get from citation software, because whether they make the mistake or you would still lose points here. And in this case, if we look through it, we can spot a couple minor errors to fix. We've got an extra space there. We want to capitalize the first letter of the first word of the subtitle. And then here for APA style, this would be written like that. Now, we still saved a lot of time, but we did that little bit of proofreading to make sure we get full credit for there. Also, interestingly, because this is a co-author situation, Scovell assisted Sheryl Sandberg in writing this up in book form, as happens with many CEOs. You might have something. And okay, we have Sandberg and Scovell. And so whatever you're referring to, yeah, this is still saying the idea originated with her, but we're getting the information from different sources. Now, this isn't the only book that she wrote, so we could go ahead and look at, say, one of the follow-up volumes. And I would say, make sure you're doing everything that you want everything that the assignment requires you to do first before you go off on those tangents. But if you've already read that, you already have it, and it's relevant and helpful for your writing to use that, great. So we've got another book here, and we'll add this so we see the alternate form here. So this is her book, option D, also co-written with some other folks. So here we go ahead to cite that. And this is an interesting thing that you want to be on the watch out for, because often these are input by a software algorithm, and it's not necessarily working with the correct thing. So we could see that would need to be capitalized with a W, that will be turned into the abbreviated form. But also we're looking at this and say, hold on, this cover seems to show multiple authors, and the entry is only showing Sheryl Sandberg. So sometimes you'll find that something just is not right, and so go with your gut telling you, hey, that's missing something, and say, okay, let's go ahead and check this. And we can use the cite button again to save on some time here, but we always want to check. So in this case, it loads up, and that looks pretty close. We need to make the same type of things, but that looks about right. And we can also open up the Google preview and go look at the front page and say, okay, we have two people listed as the authors here. Let me circle that so it's a little easier to spot. So the title page lists just those two. So we know that the original one we looked at is incorrect, and we got that feeling from the cover. But since we are double checking this because we want to be absolutely certain, we determined, yes, it is mostly correct in that other one. So, all right, great. We have another piece here. And in this case, that's going here. As before, we're abbreviating first edition, getting rid of that extra space, and capitalizing that. So we have another book we could be citing. And so whatever we're putting there, that's going to be Sandberg, ampersand, and then we have Grant, 2017. All right, so when you are applying this, now we're talking about multiple things being combined together. So however you describe it, we just need to make sure that it is clear where the information is coming from. Now, I won't be writing this paper for you. That's your thing. But if we're talking about how to do it, we know it's going to be using certain language. Now, this here is referring back to the course reading. So that's another source that you probably want to be checking and using as part of your write-up for this. So let's go back to the course material here. And we have, oh, yes, that does correspond to our leadership theory and practice course readings. All right, well, let's go back to the syllabus here and take a look at what that is listing. So here we see the course textbook here. And we could just go ahead and copy that and head over to our Word document. But you always want to make sure that you are doing your due diligence. So if I paste this here, just add our APA reference file, we have some extra information here. So the ISBN numbers, these unique identifiers for the book, those aren't included in APA style, so take that out. In APA 7th edition, we no longer include city and state, so we take that out. And then one space after period, and then this should be in sentence case, so lowercase p. And that was Northouse 2022. List whatever they are, and then you might have something like and list whatever it is. So in this case, again, even though we're talking about Sandberg's ideas here, and I realize that there's a typo here, so make sure you get these aligned. So make sure that it is clear that you are always identifying where that particular set of information is coming from. Because even though it's all originating here, and here it's written up in Nordhaus, here it's written up in Sandberg and Scavel, here it's published by the TED Foundation, and each of these things is giving us a clear path to where to get more information on that. And so no matter who published the source that you were describing, we have a clear delineation to that's where that information came from. And that is the most difficult part about writing about different theories, just keeping track of where the information came from. So I hope that was helpful. We're going to take a pause here for about 25 minutes, and then we'll pick up with the next webinar. But let me answer a couple questions related to what we were describing today. So if you head over to the Online Writing Center website, let's go ahead and take a journey there. If we head over to the Online Writing Center website, we have our webinars page here. And if you're just looking for things related to your course, you can scroll down and find this tab guide. It's always expanding as we add new webinars and new webinar tie-ins. So after this recording is posted, it's going to appear here in a space for this particular class right over here. But if you're just looking for something on a different topic, like theoretical frameworks, you can do a word search. And then you can see, okay, that's one webinar here. Here's another. And say, okay, well, maybe I'm just searching for a framework and see, all right, we've got a lot more things. And so I can just look through, because this page also has every single webinar listed here. So you can do a word search. And if in doubt, if you can't find something or your eyes glaze over each time you look at this, that's all right. You can also ask us by sending an email to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu and say, hi, I'm looking for a resource for X, or I'm doing this kind of thing. Do you have something to help, or any recommendation? And we get questions like that all the time. So please feel free to send us an email. Again, that's onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. And with that, I will bid you good night. Catch you later.